soulless and purposeless and only gives us the facts to do with as we please? Or does the mind explain a little to us why things happen and why we can make different things happen in our own lives if we really want to? Is the mind serving us? Is the mind helping us to grow, or is it simply helping us to be lazy? Does the mind mean that we are making better use of our talents, or simply getting more for them and making no good use at all? Is the mind giving us a success in the terms of real estate and stocks and bonds, which incidentally can be wiped out very quickly in spite of mental ingenuity, or more usually because someone else's mind is smarter than ours? This is all part of a great delusion, and yet with this delusion we try to live. So with a mind that won't tell us the truth, or we don't expect it to, or won't let it tell us the truth, a set of emotional factors that will not permit us to be happy, cheerful, pleasant people, a vital system that is so diluted and degenerated by our upper conduct that we are tired all the time, and finally a body that might be well expected to hold on for quite a while, that becomes a wreck in 50 or 60 years. Now this is the pattern against which the ages put up the pattern of human growth. Everywhere we look, we see that nature is insisting upon improvement. Nature will not sustain that which is not growing. Nature will not tolerate forever that which is contrary to the common good. If we want to be successful people, we better get started copying the way nature does it, and not expect to have some strange abnormality make us satisfied and happy. Now we come to another factor then, that is the fifth factor. We can call it what we want to. The Buddhist calls it Buddhi, or the Bodhi of upper intelligence. It has sometimes been called the divine mind. It has been called the upper mind, the psychic mind, the soul mind. And perhaps the soul mind is about as good as anything we can find to call it. This is the sensor. This is the power of the soul, which can never rest while the organisms are corrupt. The soul is that which is a small, silent voice, but it's there forever. It is something that finally forces us to recognize that we are not doing what we ourselves really want to do, that we are buried in the confusion of our own ambitions. So the problem of the soul becomes something that is higher than mind. The soul deals in finalities. The soul can ask the individual the simple question: what is all adding up to? All the things we do, are they all ending in the graveyard? Is materiality an acceptable attitude? The mind, under certain conditions, particularly if it moves in a sophisticated set, will say, yes, I can be an atheist. I don't necessarily believe in anything, because if I believe in something, I'm apt to have some of my ambitions curtailed. If I believe in God, I cannot do these things which are disobedient to every record we have of divinity, therefore let's eliminate divinity. They believe this. They say that the universe is what we make it every day, nothing more, nothing less. It's a machine. And it's a kind of a computer that apparently makes as many mistakes as our new computers make. And that's numerous. But the universe is not a computer. The universe is a mass of obvious intelligence. It is the most supreme example of a wisdom beyond comprehension by man. The universe is a tremendous living organism which, in spite of anything we believe or do not believe, is always right. We cannot break its rules. They are bigger than we will ever be. We have to live within it. Therefore, the psychic part of man, the soul, says very simply, what is a man worth when he has lost all his worldly goods? Answer, he is worth exactly what he was before. The entire problem of success as we know it within very moderate and normal conscientious details may be necessary to our survival here. A reasonable amount of endeavor, a useful and fulfilling career if possible, an honest day's work honestly done, no one doubts or questions. The question is, to what degree are we using these instruments that have been given to us simply to add to something that adds to nothing? How are we going to do, what are we going to do about the yacht and the Bahamas when we aren't here anymore? And how long will it be? Many individuals seem to act as though they were going to live forever, and then mistakes cut them down, mistakes of their own making. So why should we destroy our integrity, corrupt our families, destroy our civilizations, impoverish humanity, leave half the earth starving to death, in order that a few, or even more than a few, can do something very important now, like amassing a great fortune? What is it all about? Before the individual can hope to go on to the esoteric worlds of thought, he's got to think these things through. He's got to come to the final conclusion that he must clean the inside of his own cup. He must see that his own life is, as far as is humanly possible, brought under moderation, under a conscientious use of what he has, and a continuous dedication to the service of his fellow men. These are the things which, to the gurus of old, were the indispensable values. Now, the Indian gurus who had their disciples have become a legendary kind of group. They were persons who became the spiritual parents of young people to give them a training or an insight or an understanding. Very often the young people went and lived in the ashram or in some hermitage where the guru lived. They lived a very simple life. They lived a very quiet life. And they lived constantly in the presence of a person who was beyond the temptations of mortal life. The guru was a living embodiment of the teachings that they hoped to come to. The guru had no material possessions. All his worldly goods was a lota, a bowl which was to be his begging bowl. He had a few little strips of cloth, a bead or two around his neck, a dhoti around his waist. This was all the material possessions he had. He lived only to help and educate and enlighten his disciples. Therefore, for these young people who lived with him for 5 or 10 years, day or night and night, he became a living example of being exactly what he taught. Now, this is very important. He gave the example of no exploitation. He offered nothing to the disciple except the right to grow. He offered no satisfaction, no end to personal problems, but only a quietude which would cause these problems to solve themselves. The guru was a living example of what is accomplished by simply being in the world but not of it. And the disciples who came to him became teachers in their turn. They were there in order to learn to become servants of human need. There was never any discussion of great establishments. The great work was the simple work of living true to principle and bestowing this vital experience to others who came after. Now, it's hard to do this in our modern civilization. We know that, because the old days are not with us very much anymore, and young people gathering for various religious purposes have not the background. These two students that came to the gurus came from families that had religious domination in thought and philosophy for maybe 50 generations. We have nothing like that today. We have no way of classifying or finding out just how to judge the validity of various paths that seem to open. But we can do something. We are not powerless to make certain decisions that are really useful to us. One of these decisions is that we can be slow to become involved in an organization or in a teaching which we know nothing about. We have the right to observe. And those who desire to join an organization must not and should not be over-influenced by promotional material or things of this nature. The individual who is wise in these matters will do well to observe this group of people very carefully and probably hold decision for at least 1 year. If during that year they have evidence of the integrity of those people, the dedications that they have to the higher principles of life, that they are free from ulterior motives and they are free from emotional combativeness, they are neither worriers, nor fearers, nor hopers, but they are workers. If in the end of a year it proves conclusively that this group is getting along well together, that kindness has been born among them, that friendship is their common term, and that they are dedicated to a purpose that is commendable. At the end of a year of observation, the individual may feel that he can decide wisely whether or not this particular group is for him. The same type of thing occurs in connection with individual teachers. They should be observed. Their motives should be analyzed. The individual should try to get over his terrific pressure to get spiritual quick and find out whether there is any substance in the matter under consideration. He must try to gradually get away from all inducements that are offered to him that are not part of the integrities of universal truth. That he is being invited maybe too strenuously, that he is not ready for what is being offered to him, or that those who are offering it do not have a proper dedication on their own parts, that there is not a true recognition of the fact that the entire course of spiritual growth is the long, quiet journey home, as Plotinus called it. It is the trip back to the source of ourselves, to the great foundations and integrities that were made flesh and dwelt in us. Therefore, our entire purpose is to grow, and by growth, to serve. And this gives us one more final attitude about the matter. And that is, what do we expect to be if we grow? If we achieve the enlightenment that is promised, if we attain to the tremendous internal vision that we would like to have, what are we going to do? What is our use going to be? Are we going to use wisdom largely to keep our own contentments? Are we going to use this wisdom to get away from all troubles, difficulties, labors, and worries? Are we going to use this to become superior to other people? Is it going to glorify us and gratify us to know that we have achieved? All these attitudes are for the most part wrong. The answer lies again that the only reason that we can really want to grow rightly is that we may become instruments of the attainment of universal growth for all that lives. In other words, we become servants of something higher no matter how high we go. Until finally we are the servant of truth itself. And until then, the journey isn't over. And when we are servants of truth, we are in slavery to reality. There is nothing beyond that we can go. And yet that slavery is a strange kind of complete freedom, because with it is the recognition of the integrities we seek and the perfect acceptance of a divine state for which we were originally intended. But egoism must go. All of the ulterior motives. The individual must not follow these lines in order to be prosperous or in order to reconcile some inconsistency of his own mind. He cannot possibly have any other motive except a sincere 100% dedication to the achievement of union with the reality of which he is an inevitable part. until he does this,